from WCIA 3 Plus. With Taylor Mitchell. This is Chat with the Chief.
Welcome back to another Chat with the Chief episode. I'm your host, Taylor Mitchell. Joining us back again is Champaign County Sheriff Dustin Herman. Thanks again for coming and hanging out with us.
Thanks for inviting me back.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit back in the summer. Now we're getting into the fall. Lots of kind of new things happening over at the Champaign County Sheriff's Office, including some new buildings that you guys are finally getting settled in. So tell me about those new buildings and how it's impacting the Sheriff's Office.
Sure. So towards the end of last year, we had our renovated consolidated jail facility project that was completed. And why that's exciting is because it allowed us, we were spending about $3.5 million a year on housing inmates out of county. And when inmates are housed out of county, we are unique in Champaign County where we provide things for inmates like a certain number of free phone calls and they're closer to family members and different things like that. And so when you house inmates out of county, we did it out of necessity, but some of those things go to the wayside because other counties aren't required to provide some of the things that we choose to require or that we choose to provide here to inmates in Champaign County. And so we brought inmates back. The very interesting thing about this facility is I wish we didn't have offenders. I wish we didn't have offenders
until we can all get on the same
suffering
page
from substance
when we're not
abuse.
so divisive
But
on
unfortunately,
that
arrests
feel
are
like they're
made
important
of,
at the time, but they're
of
really not.
individuals
What's really important
with
is
those
our
special
future. Don't
needs,
just
right?
write
Those
once,
special
write a couple
population of
times.
inmates. And so
let's work
what
on
this
this
facility
together,
allows us to
and,
do is it
my
allows us
seat's
to
open to
better
anybody.
take care of the needs
Come right.
of inmates who
Make
come
up
into
your
my
own
custody.
mind.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that as the warden of the county jail, as overseeing the county jail, anybody who's arrested in Champaign County for a state offense will come to the Champaign County jail. And so that's ranging from Champaign-Urbana to my deputies to Rantoul to even the state police on the interstate. So if they arrest somebody in Champaign County, they come to my Champaign County jail. And in that case, we don't have a say on who we get, right? We can't say, oh, please send me the best arrestees in the world and leave the other ones somewhere else. So when they come to our door, it is our job, number one, to do the best job we can to assess the needs of those inmates. And that's really challenging because they're not always forthright with what those special needs may be. More times than not, they don't tell us that they just ingested an illegal substance, 3 hours before they came to jail. And then 12 hours later, we have to watch them for signs of an overdose or signs of withdrawal. And so some of those things are unique for us in a correctional setting. And this facility allows us to better keep track of those needs and then address those needs whenever they do arise. And so that's what's really exciting about this facility. For those that we are forced to take care of, we can do that in a better way. And that then reduces lawsuits for Champaign County. That then makes my employees' jobs as correctional officers better. And it makes them want to come to work a little bit easier than it would be if we didn't have the right things in place. We also moved into the Bennett Administrative Center, which is, for those who were familiar with where the sheriff's office was before, it was right across from the courthouse. Well, the Bennett Administrative Center is right across the courthouse too. We're just right across the street from where we were. And so this is a really exciting project because I have been with it since I think we started the planning for it in 2020, right before COVID hit, and then things kind of stopped during COVID. And I've been able to see this project from the very beginning design phases, now that it comes to fruition. And why is it interesting? It's because it allows my deputies to have the space that they need. We moved from a building that was opened in 1980 into a building now that was open in 2025. And so you can imagine how much policing and investigations has changed in that amount of time. And so it has allowed us the opportunity to give the space I need for my patrol division, to give the space we need for evidence collection. More and more, some people don't think about the behind the scenes, evidence collection and things like that. And so we are required by law to keep evidence for longer and longer. So homicide cases, sexual assault cases, we're required now to keep that evidence forever. And so that takes more space. And that's a part of the sheriff's office that nobody ever sees, but it's a very important part of the adjudication process, of the appeal process for those who are found guilty in court. And so that is a benefit to us. Our investigations has been enhanced by technology and more room for them to do the things they need to do to go to court with those who are accused of committing a crime, and then hopefully get that case adjudicated successfully. And then it has also allowed us to bring our emergency managers on site. I know my emergency manager, John, was actually on a podcast with Kevin Leidy here a couple of weeks ago talking about the roles and functions of emergency management. So that falls under the purview of the Champaign County Sheriff's Office. And so it allows us to put everything under one roof, which then makes us more effective and more efficient. And it just makes sense with such a large, I think I'm the largest county agency besides maybe RPC, but it really does make things more effective and efficient for us. And that then, in exchange, makes it more efficient and effective for Champaign County residents. And that's all we want. We want to serve Champaign County the best way we can. And all of these things we put in place the last 6 years or so helps us to be able to do that.
That's incredible. And kind of going back to the county jail, what are the big differences you've seen since having this new facility, and how has it, impacted the inmates you house?
Sure. So I would say that the inmates we currently house are more violent and more challenging. And the reason why is because with Pretrial Fairness Act that went into effect a couple of years ago now, only those who a judge determines are a public safety risk or a flight risk are the ones staying in jail long term. And so anybody who doesn't meet that criteria, the judge is letting out pretrial release. And so we don't have those accused of low-level offenses anymore in custody. And so that then creates an increased challenge for us with that mental illness, with those more prone to aggressiveness and violence. And so this space allows us to, number one, be safer, because my utmost goal is to have a safe and secure facility. That has to be my number one priority for the inmates and for my correctional officers and Champaign County in general. And then take the needs of the inmates into account. How can we best address those needs? Now, my primary goal, even my secondary goal, is not to make it the best experience for inmates incarcerated. There are inmates who are incarcerated in jail, but I have to work within the Constitution. I have to make sure that needs are met. We have to make sure we have humane conditions for inmates while they're in there. And so it is in all of our best interest to make it I don't want to say the best experience, but a well-rounded experience. And that equals some of the things that sometimes people say, well, why are we providing inmates with free phone calls, right? Why? The county is not absorbing that cost right now. I was able to negotiate that into the contract of our phone contract here this last time. And why is that important? Is because we know that connections to family members outside of jail helps keep inmates their tempers low, their attitudes a little bit better when they have that connection to positive connections in the community. And so that's why we provide things like that. Why do we allow inmates to text? Now, that's on them. So anything text-wise, if they decide they're going to watch videos or something like that, movies or something in the jail, that's on them to pay for. The county does not pay for those things. But why do we provide those? It's because it allows inmates time to be passed easier, I guess, which then makes it easier on my correctional officers. It makes a least adversarial environment, which then makes it a less violent environment. And so a lot of times when I explain it to Champaign County residents like that, they're like, oh, okay, so that makes sense. Because a lot of times people are like, why should they be getting some of these things out in the community, or why should they be getting some of these things in corrections that some people in the community don't even have, right? They can't even afford to get. Right. And that's the reason why we provide some of these things. And like I said, it's really not anything on the taxpayers, because the inmates, if they choose to do this, they can have commissary on their books. Family members can put money on their books, and then they can choose how they want to spend that money.
Definitely. And I've talked to a couple of county sheriffs around central Illinois. So my question to you is, I know some of them are seeing some overcrowding issues. Are you seeing that as well, or not in this new facility?
Surprisingly, we're not.
It's good.
We were very nervous about opening this facility because we went from 2 facilities that could house about 313 inmates to 1 facility that houses about 216.
Oh, so you went down.
We did. We went down significantly. Now, we are not housing 212 inmates. I average about 180 right now. The difference is the space. And so we have better space to where now females, for an example, we may have 8 females in custody. We may have 2 females in custody. With our previous setup before this consolidation and renovation, we may have had those two female inmates in an area that houses 20 female inmates. We can't do anything about that because females have to be out of sight and sound of male inmates by law. And so now we could potentially put those 2 female inmates in a pod with 4. So they may be taking up 2 extra spaces, but that's not taking up 18 extra spaces. And so this allows us to really modify the space we need and adapt to what our inmate population may be at the time. And so that has really helped with getting the right space, with getting the overcrowding issues and things like that. Now, the caveat I always tell people is you never know what our inmate population is going to be. And so when we see more violent crime out in the community, more arrests are typically made. Those arrests then come to the Champaign County Jail. And then we may have to adapt to an increased inmate population of even 20 or 30, depending on how many arrests are being made out in the community.
Interesting. Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for explaining a little bit about how the facility is impacting Champaign County. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some trends the sheriff's office is seeing. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Chat with the Chief. I'm your host, Taylor Mitchell, joined by Champaign County Sheriff Dustin Herman. Again, thank you so much for being here and coming back.
It's great to be here.
Good. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit about what trends you're seeing here in Champaign County.
Sure. So one of the things we've been seeing has been an increase in fatality accidents. And so, one thing that I do, so through the law, I'm what we consider the supervisor of safety. What that does is it allows me the opportunity, provides an obligation to really take a look at any consistencies of accidents on Champaign County roadways. And we focus primarily on rural roadways or roadways that are in the primary jurisdiction of the sheriff's office. There are fatalities in Champaign-Urbana. Generally, the stats that I cite, generally the information I provide is focused on rural roadways. And so we have seen an increase in fatalities this year, and it's not unusual to see fatalities, but we have seen an increase this year, which is interesting. And so one of the things that I like to do with my team is sit down and look at every single fatality accident that we've seen and look at any kind of consistencies, any kind of trends. Is there somewhere that my deputies need to focus more on? Do we need to focus more on speed enforcement or DUI enforcement? A big thing has kind of been stop sign enforcement, not necessarily fatalities, but seeing people run stop signs, seeing people run stop lights. And so looking at these consistencies,
the deputies can see us on the
and the surprising thing is there hasn't necessarily been one intersection or one cause. We have seen speed as a little bit of an increase of reasoning for fatality accidents or just accidents in general. We see stop signs as an increase in accidents in general, but not necessarily fatalities, right? And so those things are important, but then really looking at why fatalities are happening. And one of the reasons fatalities are happening, we're seeing, is because of unrestrained drivers or passengers.
Feel like they're important at the time,
and
but
so
they're really not.
in one
What's
scenario
really
we had, or one fatality accident we had earlier on this year up by Ludlow,
let's work on this
there
together.
were 3 fatalities in one accident.
My seat's open to
and
anybody.
None of the 3
Come right.
individuals, if I recall, were wearing
Make up your own mind.
And so when you look at those statistics, so we can give we can give seatbelt tickets, right? It's a lower cost. I think it's $55 for a seatbelt ticket. In my mind, not motivation to, if somebody doesn't want to wear a seatbelt because you might die if you don't, $55 fine isn't going to really motivate you, right? And so one of our goals is to really provide that education. It may not stop the accident from happening, but it might save your life. And so my deputies are out there. If you ever wonder why deputies are focused on, seatbelt tickets or something like that, that's why, is because we are seeing trends where if you are not seatbelted, you are more likely to be killed if you're involved in a crash. One other thing we've seen, and I think we've had 3 or 4 this year so far, including one that just happened this last weekend, have been motorcycle accidents that's resulted in fatalities. And the majority of the time, it is the fault of the motorcycle. And so one thing that we're really stressing is making sure that people are paying attention. And, if you operate a motorcycle, making sure that you realize people may not see you until the last moment. When I'm just driving home, when I'm driving around town, my personal observation is a lot of motorcycles drive really fast. And so making sure that you're taking a couple of extra seconds for other motorists. You may see these, and my parents are motorcyclists. They drive motorcycles all the time. And so, they are very big about, hey, start seeing motorcycles, right? And you'll see signs when you go by Harley Davidson, you'll see signs out in the county that say, start seeing motorcycles. I think it's important for motorists other than those operating motorcycles to actually realize that, hey, I may need to take a couple extra seconds at that stop sign. Don't run that stop sign because I can't see anybody, because those motorcyclists are really difficult to see, especially if they're driving fast. Now, it may not be your fault, but do you want that on your conscience that you were involved in a fatality accident when you could have taken a couple extra seconds? And so those are just things that we've seen as some trends that are occurring in the county that are a little troubling. And it's kind of frustrating when there's not one in particular cause that you can do something about.
Right. Are you seeing these motorcycle accidents on the highway in rural roads, or just kind of everywhere?
So the majority of the time, we're not necessarily what I would call a rural road, but we're seeing them on
streets.
And
Okay.
so, for an example, North Mattis. So once you pass, Thomas More, and then you're going out more into the country area, but it's it's just like it's a lined road. You wouldn't know the difference if you didn't see all the buildings disappear, right?
Right.
Those areas down by Homer Lake, where it's a lined road, a striped road. It's paved. It's a good road. We are seeing motorcycle accidents on roads like that, not necessarily out in the county where the road really isn't in that good of a shape, anyways.
So is that area, do they have more traffic then, like more cars and more people, or is it just maybe the way that the roads are?
I would say that one, and this is just me thinking,
Yeah,
right?
of course, me too.
I would say that it is wide open space.
Okay.
And so it's fun to operate a motorcycle, right? Now, my thing is a Jeep. And so a topless Jeep in the middle of the summer, driving down the road, it is fun to be out in the county, just driving, and you're kind of carefree. I can see it being the same way on a motorcycle. You don't expect to run into anybody. You're kind of just enjoying yourself, and the next thing you know, there's a traffic accident. And so I understand, but how do you persuade somebody to not be involved in activities like that? We try really hard. There's a reason why I do press releases whenever we have accidents like that, is because I want people to know that this has been a contributor, because I don't want somebody to die as a result of an accident. I don't want any accidents to occur, because that is traumatic. Even if it's not a fatality, that is traumatic for everybody out in the community and everybody who's involved in it. And so making sure that we're putting that out there, so hopefully it's in the back of somebody's mind. Yeah, it looks like nobody's coming at this intersection. I can see for miles, in my opinion. Nobody's ever on this roadway. Well, there could be somebody on this roadway. And so making sure they're taking a couple extra seconds there, I guess, is my plea to individuals to just be careful.
Definitely. And kind of talking about vehicles and roadways, let's talk a little bit about license plate readers and, what that means in the county.
Sure. So license plate readers, we have seen good success with license plate readers. I know that other communities, Champaign, U of I, Rantoul, Mahomet, they have all seen pretty good success with them too. With the Mahomet case, there was, the homicide, the triple homicide that they had here earlier in the year or the end of last year. They actually linked where that individual went as a result of license plate readers. And we have been highlighting a cold case from the 1980s here recently at the sheriff's office, and we did not have license plate readers in the 1980s. I don't want anybody to get the impression of that. My point, though, is that license plate readers can provide a piece of information that if that would happen today, that may give us that first piece of information we need to go on to then solve that case. And a lot of times, when we were talking about implementing license plate readers, a lot of people thought this is another way Big Brother is going to, step on our toes and they're going to be watching every single thing we do. I hope that we, as law enforcement agencies in Champaign County, have proven that that's not the case, because we don't actively seek individuals for certain things. It's really a reactive tool until a crime occurs. And then that allows us then to put the pieces together. And a lot of times, like this cold case, we have no idea how this was committed. But if we had license plate readers at that time, we may be able to look at individuals who were in that area at that time and then just simply start a conversation and then rule out individuals who may not be involved or find suspects as a result.
Definitely. So moving forward is, like you said, that's helpful evidence and helpful information for any case, especially we're in 2025 now.
We are always looking at the best way to use technology like license plate readers while also abiding by the Constitution, while also making sure that we're following Illinois laws. And so we have a strong leadership team here in Champaign County with all of the technology and all of the law enforcement agencies. And so, Champaign County's in good hands. And so making sure we have that checks and balances, it would be absurd for a 21st century law enforcement agency to not take advantage of body cameras, license plate readers, the technology that is available to us to help solve crimes more effectively. But with that comes those restrictions. With that comes that oversight and those ethics. And in Champaign County, we're in a really good place right now with all of the administrators from all of the departments here.
Very cool. It's cool to see our technology developing and how that can help you guys. Well, we're going to take one final break, and when we come back, we're back into school. So what does the Champaign County Sheriff's Office want to remind you of? We're going to tell you after the break. Welcome back. Final thoughts with Champaign County Sheriff Dustin Herman. Before we go, I want to talk a little bit about, we are back into the school year here. Anything you want to remind parents as we continue into the school year?
Sure. So the thing that we always stress when it comes to this time of year is kids are spontaneous. And so motorists who are driving through school zones, we are very strict when it comes to speed limits in school zones. And the reason why is because of that spontaneity with kids. And so the last thing we want is for a child to be hit, especially in a school zone, but anywhere, around bus stops too, right? So we get stop arm violations. If you see those amber flashing lights on a bus, you know those red flashing lights are going to come next. So my suggestion is just to stop and wait for those individuals to get on that bus, those red lights to go off. And then when you're in a school zone, the reason why school zone speed limits are lower is because the impact of an accident is higher at increased speed limits or at increased speeds. And so we lower speed limits. So if there is an accident, then hopefully it is less devastating. But with a kid, it's going to be devastating if you hit a child. So that's why fines are higher. That's why speed limits are lower. That's why every single morning my deputies are going to be out in school zones. And I know that the other police departments are going to have their officers out in school zones too. And we don't give warnings. And the reason why is because the stakes are too high. And so if you're caught speeding in a school zone, we want to save lives. And so you will get a ticket. So your warning is don't speed in a school zone, right? And so that's the thing we always try to reemphasize, is because they're called accidents on a reason. Nobody plans to hit a kid. Nobody plans to hit anybody else. And so keeping those things in mind will just make sure everybody stays safe, and we're not tapping into your wallet either.
Perfect. Sheriff Harmon, thank you so much for joining us back here on the morning show. We hope you'll come back again.
It is always a joy to come see you in the mornings, Taylor.
Okay, good. Love it. Well, we're going to have another Chat with the Chief segment next week. Find out who is going to be here on next, is it what? Wednesdays? I don't even know what day it is. We'll talk to you next week.